Stop. You haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Subscribe now. We have new stories every day. Now, let's go. I informed my wife, Holly, that my seminar had wrapped up ahead of schedule. Yet, regrettably, I couldn't rearrange my flight plans. Consequently, I would still be returning home on Tuesday evening, necessitating her to pick me up from the airport around 6. Despite her initial complaint about another night apart, she assured me she'd be all the happier to see me. Her words lingered in my mind for quite some time. Reflecting on my frequent absences, I realized the importance of prioritizing my relationship with my wife of 17 years. With newfound determination, I ventured to the airport and explored the possibility of standby options. Initially uncertain, I stumbled upon a flight bound for an airport closer to home, one I had never utilized before, situated nearly 2 hours south of our residence. Taking a chance, I discovered a flight departing for this alternative airport in just half an hour. With little hesitation, I approached the ticket desk, surprised by the simplicity of securing a seat. An hour later, I found myself airborne, mere hours away from touching down. With the prospect of renting a car and arriving home by midnight, I envisioned Polly's delighted reaction to my unexpected early return. Amused by the thought, I mentally drafted a list of ways she might express her joy, deciding to withhold my plans from her and make my arrival a delightful surprise. As the clock ticked just shy of midnight, I maneuvered my car into the driveway, greeted by the darkness of the house and the absence of Polly's car. Puzzled, I carried my bag inside, contemplating her whereabouts at such a late hour. Setting aside my plans for a surprise, I dialed her cell phone. My curiosity piqued. After a few rings, Polly answered, her voice heavy with sleepiness. "Hey, Paul. Just thought I'd check in." I fibbed, trying to gauge her reaction. "Everything's fine, mate. But it's late." "I was asleep," she replied, her words tinged with weariness. "I'll be at the airport to pick you up at 6 tomorrow. Don't worry." Her response only deepened my confusion. Where could she possibly be sleeping if not at home? "Where are you then?" I tried calling the landline, but got the machine. I pressed, unable to shake off my suspicion. "Why, in bed, of course. Our phone's acting up. I got someone coming over tomorrow to fix it. Seems like it's not just us," she explained, her voice trailing off with a yawn. "Just use my cell if you need me." My mind raced with possibilities. Was she truly in bed upstairs? The scenario seemed implausible, fueling my growing suspicion that she wasn't being entirely honest with me. But why? "Well, looks like I won't be on that flight tomorrow. Plans have changed, so don't bother coming to the airport," I informed her, masking my uncertainty. "I'll keep you posted once I've sorted out the details of my return." "Oh, sweetie, I'll miss you." "Hurry home," she exclaimed, her voice brimming with affection. "I can't wait to see you." "I'll be in touch, darling. Sorry for waking you up." "Sweet dreams," I replied, concluding our conversation. "I will," she assured me, and as she hung up, did I catch a hint of laughter in her voice. Dialing our home phone, it rang without issue. Tempted momentarily to stage a conversation with myself, I dismissed the idea and instead embarked on a search throughout the house, checking under the bed and every conceivable hiding spot. Alas, Polly had vacated the premises. Though I'm in sales, not rocket science, my instincts kicked in, detecting something amiss. Admitting my own folly, I resolved to take action. Rising early the following morning, I discreetly relocated the rental car across the street. Around 7 a.m., Polly's car pulled into the driveway, accompanied by a male passenger. Ducking into a nearby closet, I left the door slightly ajar, eavesdropping on their exchange. "Just need to change and head to work," Polly informed her companion. "I'll grab some clothes for tomorrow to save us a trip back in the morning. Be back in 10. I'd lend a hand, but then I'd be responsible for getting you back into bed." He chuckled, "And then I'd have to fire you for being late." "I doubt you'd have the heart to fire me." Holly's voice drifted down from upstairs. You seem to enjoy having me under you too much. Even your wife thinks I'm the perfect secretary. What would you say to her?" So this was Polly's new boss, the one she described as obnoxious and arrogant. I couldn't help but wonder what she saw in him, given her initial impression. He'd only been with the company for a couple of weeks, if memory served me right. Clearly, he was a fast mover. "I told her you were the same age as her mother and weighed 220 pounds, her boss chuckled. "When she sees you, I might have to let you go anyway. And I mentioned I was house hunting this week. Looks like I won't be straying too far from the hotel for a couple of days." Polly rejoined the conversation, looking stunning as ever, and Mr. Boss, was his name Johnny, pulled her close, planting a slow, wet kiss on her lips. My blood boiled with a mix of jealousy and rage. I fought the urge to grab an umbrella and shove it where the sun doesn't shine. "Why don't you plan on spending tomorrow night with me here? We'll go to dinner and be back by 8 p.m. Who knows, you might get lucky, and after you're done with the owner, we can explore every room," Polly suggested with a playful grin. "Interested in that tour?" "What if hubby comes home early?" inquired the boss. "Josh, you're such a nervous wreck," she chuckled, confirming his name. "Nat will call to arrange the airport pickup. He always gives me a day's notice, so if he doesn't call today, he won't be coming home tomorrow." "Fair enough," Josh agreed. "I don't need some jealous husband coming after me." "Nat's harmless," Polly reassured him. "He'd probably offer you a beer and apologize to me for driving me into your arms." "Sounds like a pushover to me. My wife would have my head," Josh remarked. "And I'd have Nat's if he ever cheated on me." "Fear keeps you men in line," Polly remarked, adding, "most of the time. You don't seem too scared of your wife." "Trust me, I'd be in big trouble," Josh replied. "I'd be lucky to come out of it alive, let alone with my dignity. Luckily, she's in Houston, so I feel pretty safe." Their voices trailed off as they left the house. My face flushed red, and my blood pressure soared. Not only had she been unfaithful, but my wife also held me in contempt. I sank into a chair, contemplating my predicament. Slowly, a plan began to form in my mind. I recalled Polly mentioning that her new boss had been transferred from the company headquarters in Houston. Determined to uncover his identity, I made a few discreet phone calls. With a bit of artful probing directed at a receptionist at Polly's workplace, I swiftly obtained the necessary details. His name was Joshua Perry, and he was married with 2 teenage children. His family was remaining in Texas until the end of the school year, after which they would join him in Springfield. Apparently, he spent his evenings searching for a suitable house. Utilizing an online directory, I located 3 individuals named Josh Perry in Houston. Fortunately, my first call hit the jackpot. "Mrs. Perry, Mrs. Joshua Perry?" I inquired. "Yes, this is Mrs. Joshua Perry. How can I assist you?" she responded. "Does your husband work for Halifax Company?" I inquired further. "Yes, he does," she confirmed. "This is Mr. Grant Green from Halifax Company," I fibbed. "We're organizing a surprise welcome party for your husband, Josh, and yourself. We'll provide round-trip tickets to Springfield and back. It's all a surprise for Josh. Can you make it?" Feeling a pang of guilt for my deceit, I reminded myself that all's fair in love and war. And at that moment, I was certainly at war. "I could arrange for my sister to watch the children," she replied. "It sounds lovely. When is the event?" I nearly gave a sarcastic retort to her question, but managed to restrain myself. "Tomorrow evening it is. You'll need to catch flight 1435 on American. Just charge it to your card, and the company will reimburse Josh through his paycheck," I informed her. "We'll have someone at the airport to pick you up. The flight arrives at 5 p.m., and the party starts at 8, so there should be plenty of time. And remember, keep this under wraps, all right?" She assured me of her discretion, and I concluded the conversation. Next, I reached out to a few of Polly's friends and relatives, extending invitations to a surprise party for her. I explained that she was receiving a raise from her boss, and I felt it was a cause for celebration. Everyone seemed content with that explanation and agreed to keep it hush-hush for Polly. I instructed them to arrive at our home by 7 to ensure they were there when Polly arrived. Not wanting to be an inconsiderate host, I contacted a local caterer and placed an order for food and drinks for the following evening. I specified that everything should be set up on the deck off the living room by our pool. I couldn't help but think how much Polly had always wanted to host a nice party on that deck. This would surely delight her. Leaving detailed instructions, I informed them that the house might be empty upon their arrival, but they could access everything around the side of the house. The following day, I arrived at the airport a good half-hour early. As passengers began to filter into the luggage area, I mustered the courage to approach a couple of unaccompanied women, inquiring if they were Mrs. Perry. Just as I was addressing one lady, a voice called out to me. "Hello, I'm Mrs. Perry," she declared. "Are you here to pick me up?" I was almost dumbstruck when I laid eyes on her. She possessed the allure of a Hollywood starlet. It took me a moment to gather my thoughts before I could respond. While my wife was undeniably attractive, this woman set a new standard of beauty. "I'm Nathan, and yes, I'm here to pick you up. My wife works with your husband," I explained. "Has he ever mentioned Polly?" "Oh yes, he has, but I imagined her husband to be a bit older," she remarked. Damn, that jerk had indeed painted Polly as an older woman to his wife. I had to think on my feet. She seemed somewhat skeptical. I get that misconception a lot for marrying an older, more robust woman. I always say she just has more experience, and there's more of her to love, I offered, hoping to smooth over the situation. She seemed to mull it over before finally smiling. I'd managed to sidestep that potential disaster. Collecting her bags, we made our way to the parking lot. By the time we reached my place at 6:30, I was explaining to Mrs. Perry that it was an outdoor party for her husband, as well as a birthday celebration for my wife. As guests began to arrive, the caterer meticulously finished setting up, and I was thoroughly impressed. It resembled a top-notch affair, something I hadn't realized could be accomplished so effortlessly. By 7:30, all the guests I'd invited had arrived. I had instructed them to park behind a nearby church, ensuring our driveway remained clear. Gathering everyone together, I outlined the plan. I would hide in the living room, and when the guests of honor pulled into the driveway, I'd switch off the deck lights. This would signal for everyone to hush. Our sliding glass doors opened onto the deck, with vertical blinds easily manipulated by pulling a cord. There was also a separate cord to draw the blinds away from the door. In addition, we had heavier drapes that we typically use during colder weather, large enough for me to conceal myself behind. From there, I could reach both the cords for the blinds and the switch for the deck lights. A few minutes before 8, I spotted Polly's car pulling into the driveway. Quickly, I switched off the deck lights and retreated behind the drapes, the room falling into a tense silence. Their passion ignited immediately. When their fervor subsided, I emerged from the shadows. "What are you doing here?" Polly demanded, her tone sharp. I couldn't help but feel a pang of disappointment at her mundane question. Perhaps the surprise had dulled her senses. "This is my home, Polly. My name is on the deed," I replied evenly. "I didn't expect you to be home for a few days," she exclaimed. "That much is evident," I responded casually. "I should probably get going," Josh interjected abruptly. "I have some things to take care of." "Can I offer you a beer or anything?" I offered, breaking the tension. Both Josh and Polly seemed taken aback by my gesture. I could almost see the gears turning in Josh's mind as he reconsidered Polly's assessment of me, offering him a beer. A small smile crept onto my face as I observed his internal deliberation. There was barely a moment for Josh to respond before his wife barged into the room from the deck, her fury palpable. Gripping her large purse tightly, she swung it with all her might, catching Josh completely off guard. He stood frozen, unable to defend himself, and I watched as he was propelled about 5 feet from where he had been standing. Following her, Polly's mother and sister entered the room, greeted by the sight of Polly still unclothed. "Put some clothes on, Polly, you disgrace," her mother spat, thrusting Polly's dress towards her. "And wipe that smirk off your face, sis," Polly's sister Sally chimed in. "That performance you just gave, you could consider a career in adult entertainment." Polly was left speechless, her shock evident. With a flick of the switch, I illuminated the deck lights, revealing another 20 pairs of eyes peering in. I ventured outside, grabbing a plate of potato salad and wings before returning indoors with a can of beer. Settling into a chair, I observed Josh struggling to sit up and Polly attempting to find her voice. It was undeniably a chaotic scene. As I chewed on a wing, I couldn't help but acknowledge that while I hadn't orchestrated this mess, Polly and Josh had brought it upon themselves, dragging their loved ones into the turmoil. In the grand scheme of things, discovering the truth and moving forward was ultimately for the best. Eventually, the chaos subsided. One of Polly's cousins escorted Mrs. Perry to a nearby motel, while another cousin aided Josh to his car and drove him to his own lodging. Polly's mother offered to take her home, but Polly declined. "I know you must be upset," Polly's mother addressed me. "And Polly really deserves a good scolding, but I believe she's already suffering." With those words, they departed, leaving Polly and me alone. She disappeared into the bathroom, and soon the sound of the shower filled the silence. Left to my own devices, I savored the taste of beer and wings, reflecting on the evening's tumultuous events. Rarely in life did plans align so perfectly and yield such results. After devouring all the salad and wings I could manage, I set about tidying up the aftermath of the gathering. Wrapping up leftovers and storing them in the fridge and freezer consumed quite some time. By the time I settled down with my final beer of the night, it was already midnight, and a sense of tranquility washed over me. Polly entered the room and took a seat opposite me. "I hope you're satisfied. You've done everything in your power to ruin my life tonight," she lamented. "Even my own family now views me as some worthless woman. Is that what you wanted?" "Polly, why would they think that? Have I done anything to warrant such a perception?" "Have you?" I countered. "The only reason for anyone to believe that is when your boss crosses the line. Would any rational person consider that the behavior of a worthless woman? If you thought there was an issue between us, you could have come to me instead of throwing a damned neighborhood gathering," she hissed, her voice edged with anger. "We have a problem." I chuckled incredulously. "So you're saying if there were an issue, you'd talk to me before seeking solace with some stranger?" "I never intended to hurt you, Nat. I never imagined you'd find out," Polly reasoned, her tone softer now. "You hurt me deliberately. So hosting a surprise party for my beloved wife at our home is worse than betraying our marriage vows?" I questioned. "I doubt many people would agree with that." Then she voiced the words I'd been waiting to hear. "If you had been more present, this wouldn't have happened," Polly reasoned. "You weren't giving me enough attention. So I fell for Josh's charm. I felt alone and vulnerable." I couldn't help but laugh, filled with a sense of irony. She was attempting to shift the blame onto me, expecting an apology for her infidelity. As I closed the bedroom door behind me and locked it, a wave of relief washed over me. The chains of emotional entrapment were finally broken. I was free, both emotionally and soon legally. A new chapter awaited, and I welcomed it with open arms. Epilogue. The days following the revelation of Polly's infidelity were a whirlwind of emotions for Nathan. As he processed the betrayal, he found a strange sense of liberation mingling with the pain. The confrontation with Polly and the subsequent fallout from their friends and family had torn away the facade of their marriage, revealing cracks Nathan had been blind to for too long. In the weeks that followed, Nathan filed for divorce. The process was neither easy nor pleasant, but with each legal document signed, he felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. He moved out of their shared home, opting for a small apartment downtown. It was modest, but it was his, free from the memories of a marriage tainted by lies and deceit. At first, the solitude was daunting. Nathan had grown accustomed to the presence of another person in his life, even if that person had betrayed him. But as the days passed, he found solace in the quiet, in the freedom to rediscover himself without the expectations and demands of a failing relationship. He threw himself into his work, channeling his energy into his sales career with renewed vigor. Without the distractions of a crumbling marriage, he found success he hadn't known possible. His colleagues noticed the change in him, remarking on his newfound confidence and determination. Amidst the chaos of rebuilding his life, Nathan found unexpected moments of joy. He reconnected with old friends, spent weekends exploring new hobbies, and savored the simple pleasure of solitude. He rediscovered the person he had been before Polly, the person he had lost sight of in the tumult of their marriage. As the months passed, Nathan emerged from the ashes of his failed marriage stronger and more resilient than ever. He no longer defined himself by the actions of his ex-wife, nor did he harbor resentment towards her. Instead, he chose to focus on his own growth and happiness, knowing that he was better off without the toxicity of their relationship. In the quiet moments of reflection, Nathan found gratitude for the experience. It had been a painful journey, but it had led him to a place of self-discovery and authenticity. He was no longer shackled by the expectations of others or weighed down by the burden of a failed marriage. He was free to live life on his own terms, unencumbered by the past. As he stood on the balcony of his new apartment, gazing out at the city skyline illuminated against the night sky, Nathan felt a sense of peace wash over him. He was no longer defined by the pain of his past, but by the promise of his future. In that moment, he knew that he was truly unshackled, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead with open arms. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.